Out that when we get to item 4 under individual consideration, there's going to be a correction. It is posted as a resolution, which is correct, but it is titled as an ordinance, and so we'll make that recommend that correction when we present the item, but just wanted to note that for the board and public. Otherwise, there will be no changes.
Okay. Are there any public comments about items that are not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, are there any commissioner comments? Patty?
First, I want to say the 4th of July parade was great. Dale, you did a great job organizing the Pitkin County Open Space and Trails float. It was really fun. We had a great time. Dale's son was there helping me load the squirt guns. I think I got wetter than the squirt guns got, but it was hot, so it wasn't.
We went through 20 gallons.
I know. We got filled up at the fire station. So, first of all, I want to say that was great. Thanks, Dale, for that effort. It was fun. Steve and I were there. Steve was leading the way, and I was riding. And we thank Tom Waldeck for it was in 1941?
Yeah, farm.
Yeah, it was really neat. He drove the tractor.
Just like in the movie Cars.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. The other thing is I want to let the public know that on Sunday, July 12th, from 11 to 4 at the Aspen Animal Shelter, they're presenting, the Friends of the Animal Shelter are presenting a Dog Day Community Carnival afternoon. I'm not sure which order it goes in because it all surrounds the dog on the memo. It's a free event to thank the community that's being sponsored by the Friends of the Animal Shelter, and they will have music and food and libations, and it's a BYOD, bring your own dog. Dogs have to be dog friendly and be on a leash. And Seth is really going all out. So again, it's a free event. They encourage you to ride the bus. They're going to be running shuttles and or walk or ride your bike. So that's going to be a great event, and hope to see everyone there.
Patty, I
Yes.
just want to add that Leslie and Holly with the Roaring Fork Horse Council also helped us with that parade, and they just happened to be seeing that.
Oh, that's right. They were with us. That's right. They were with us. They followed us to make sure that we didn't get in any more trouble than we got into. Yeah, that was great fun, wasn't it? Yeah, it was great.
It was really great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for being there.
Are there any other commissioner comments?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And I don't mean to do this to embarrass anyone in the friendly press that we have in the room, but I do need to point out that I was misquoted in today's Aspen Daily News story. We talked about two topics, one after the other with our community development staff, one related to the annexation process and what is going on there at the edge of town. And then we very quickly followed that up with a conversation about continuing to comment on the Elgibel Ace Lane property, which we have commented before and expressed our concerns. I made a comment that current proposal would only house 1/10 of their workforce generated by the new commercial growth, and somehow that was attributed to me in the comments about the annexation. So that sort of thing happens, but I just wanted to let the public know, because I already got one angry letter. How could I say something so irresponsible when I know what the city's affordable housing codes are? So I just wanted to add that clarification and go from there.
And I think I talked to Colin at Aspen Daily News earlier, and he did catch the mistake and corrected it online. But
Yes.
it's obviously too late for the print, so
Yeah,
thanks,
yeah.
Colin.
Yeah, we appreciate that and understand how it can happen. Okay.
Okay, any further commissioner comments? Okay, consent items. We have minutes of the regular meeting of June 24th, special meetings of June 2nd, and work sessions of June 16th and 23rd.
Okay, I was not here for the meeting on the 2nd because of CCI, so I would make a motion to approve the minutes of June 24th and the work session of June 16th and 23rd. Let somebody else make a motion on the 2nd afterwards.
Second?
Okay, so everything but the 2nd?
Yeah,
Okay. And I also,
wasn't there, so we can let
I
the
wasn't
others
there for the 2nd, 23rd, or 24th. So, it's been moved and seconded to approve the June 24th regular meeting and then the work session of June 16th and 23rd. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I wasn't there either, so if you read the minutes, I don't think it matters whether you're there or not, so I'll vote aye.
So we need a motion for June 2nd.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting on June 2nd.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to approve the minutes for June 2nd. All in favor, say aye.
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 I'll abstain.
Okay, moving to individual consideration items. There's only one item. It's for a public hearing today. That's an application for a special event liquor permit submitted by Jazz Aspen Snowmass. And
Steve, don't see the applicants here, but they're planning on attending. Do you want to push that?
we
a
could
little
wait,
later?
we could just move on and then we could go back to that one when the applicant comes in.
No liquor at Jazz Aspen.
I blew it.
Yeah.
You're out of here.
Okay, individual consideration items. These are first readings. The first one is an ordinance authorizing acquisition of the WinStar Trailhead property. We got Dale and Matt here from Open Space.
Thanks, Steve. Well, this story with the WinStar property goes way back. And back to before I was the open space director and before Steve Child was the county commissioner. This property once upon a time belonged to Shorty Pabst of the Pabst Blue Ribbon family. And in 1979, John Denver was looking for a place to create a foundation to have a land-based center where lots of different things could happen, ranging from agriculture to other kinds of workshops, Aikido and so on, and fell in love with this property because apparently he liked the shape of the parcel, which looks like a sperm whale if you look at the shape of the parcel. At that time he was doing a lot of swimming with whales and such. So anyway, it became a public foundation property in 1979 and eventually passed to the ownership of the National Wildlife Federation, and there was a threat of a sale to a private party in the early 90s, and Rocky Mountain Institute stepped up and said, well, no, we'd like to keep it as a public type of a property, and went through a lot of fundraising to achieve that. That included Pitkin County Open Space under my predecessor, Jane Ellen Hamilton, as well as GOCO, put money into purchasing a conservation easement on this 957 acres that not only restricts all the development to a single building envelope, but also created public access on the balance of this property. About 927 acres are open to the public. And at the time this was done, the GOCO grant that was signed by Hunter Lovins said that we want this to become a community park forever in Old Snowmass. So that's how that came about. Well, there was a flaw in the conservation and public access easement that was done, and I've thought long and hard about how that happened. And the flaw is that the public uses there are really dependent on being able to park nearby. People come up there and run and hike and ride their horses, but it's not a convenient place to get to without some place to park. And the only thing I can figure is that the reason that the Open Space Department and GOCO and RMI back at the time didn't include a public right to park is because there was an assumption that this would always be a public facility. In fact, the conservation easement identifies the building envelope for the use of a public facility and does not even allow the use for residential purposes. So this was a very unusual situation, and it led to an oversight, and we are now trying to correct it. Now, I don't lightly suggest that we have to make a second purchase in order to secure something that we all thought the county had purchased way back in 1997, which was the public use of this nearly 1,000 acres. And I tried to cure it over the years, working with Rocky Mountain Institute. Met several times with Michael Kinsley and with Marty Pickett. Martha Cochran helped with this. She was right there with us. The Aspen Valley Land Trust co-holds this easement. And we were not able to persuade the Rocky Mountain Institute to fix this oversight. And I would imagine that they were motivated by a desire to do as well as they could financially in selling the property so that they can then invest their money elsewhere, which they're doing. So that left us with a problem that we're now trying to fix. And the property that I'm recommending we purchase is one that's got some complications. It's a 5-acre parcel that has a house on it. It's a house that was built back in the late 70s. It's kind of an old solar style house that is modest by current standards in Old Snowmass, but it's not an open space type of a feature on the property. Fortunately, back in 2006, when we reauthorized the open space program, we changed the county charter to allow the county to purchase a property with open space funds and then sell elements of the property that aren't needed for open space purposes. And the choice to add that to the charter was very deliberate. The premise is that there are times when you want a certain thing that's in a property, and in order to get it, if you have the ability to buy the whole thing, get what you want, and resell what you don't need, you'll be able to do more things than you would be able to do if you were limited to only buying things that were pure open space to begin with. So in this situation, you can see in the ordinance that I've prepared, we are explicitly reserving the flexibility to resell everything that is not needed for open space purposes. Now, there's a longer history of doing this than some of you may realize. We were faced with the same dilemma when Aloha Meadows was put on the market by Jerry Greenwald 15 years ago. I was just out there last night, by the way, and was with a group of people in an interpretive walk, and we actually saw a lion chase a deer last night, which was something.
Wow.
But if the county had not been able to buy that whole property and then sell the house that was Kelly Grange's old house that's between the river and Highway 133, we wouldn't have it now. But we did that, and I'm pretty glad that we did that. This is an analogous situation where, in order to protect the public's use of the WinStar property, we'd like to protect some sort of parking area. It's not a very glamorous thing in and of itself, but that property is a magical place, and apparently the oldest juniper tree in Colorado is on that property. It's a place where a lot of people have spent a lot of time contemplating things over the years, and it's a magical little valley, and the people that like to visit it love it dearly. So we spent a good hour talking about this dilemma at our joint meeting on June 16th, and when we talked about it again at our open space board meeting last week. The complications of buying and reselling are nothing that we enter lightly. I'm happy Tim McClune is here, who's both on the Board of Trustees for Open Space, but is also the representative of District 4, which includes the Old Snowmass Valley. And the motion that the Open Space trustees made last Thursday in support of this purchase said essentially that we support this purchase, but we do not want to have open space dollars tied up in this house for any longer than it takes us to either determine whether there are other public purposes for it or to put it on the market and sell it. In fact, the broker that has this property listed now would be more than happy to turn this around and resell it for us, probably get it done this summer. So, so the Open Space Board voted unanimously to support this purchase. The contract that we have is somewhat unusual in that we included in that contract a free look through August 7th, so that we can get this under contract and we can undertake our analysis of other issues in the neighborhood, whether there's better alternatives or whether this is for some reason not workable. All of those things we can discuss between now and August 7th, and the county commissioners, in consultation with the Open Space Board, can make a determination whether you wish to close on this contract. But I think that it's very important to approve the contract itself so that we have this leverage to try to solve this situation that unfortunately we've inherited through the history so far, so that we can protect the public access to this beautiful place. And I'd like to ask Tim if he would make a comment or two about this as well.
I'd be happy to. Tim McQuinn, trustee of the Open Space Program, and I live in Old Snowmass, about 3 miles above Windstar. I thought Dale's summary was really very complete, and I don't think I would add anything other than on a number of occasions, early transactions in the 90s, and it's not to criticize, but early transactions in the 90s, when we look at them today, have missing components or inadequate documents by comparison to what we currently do, just because we've learned a lot in the last 25 years. We've done buy-downs that we wanted to do at the beginning, like at Jerome Park, but it was too big a price at the beginning, and we came back 10 years later, or more than 10 years later, to complete something we had started. And there are other examples. I think everyone on our board is very concerned. We talk about being very concerned that from time to time we end up with residences in order to acquire a critically important piece of view plane or ag or habitat. The Glacier residence is a great example of the old town site of Aspen residence, another example of that. And I think, at least I made the...
Emma.
In Emma.
Right.
Did I miss it?
You said Aspen.
In Emma. So we have a few of these that we need to do something about, either in a management plan or a resale. We reserve the right. We can't keep doing it. But I happen to make the motion on this particular thing, and I think it's the first one I've seen where it was specifically on condition that no more open space dollars be spent than the value of the trailhead that we need, and that the rest of the purchase price be paid for by a third party, whether that's resale through this broker or otherwise, as a residence, right where it is, with a barn, with septic, with a well, ready to move into as a horse property. It'd be 3 or 4 rather than 5 acres. And that was the motion that was approved, because we're mindful of the fact that we don't have the resources, the staff, et cetera, to be managing, be landlords, be managing these residential buildings or restoring them. Emma was lucky that the house could be occupied immediately because the prior owner had fixed it up. Glacier's not that way, and we can't spend funds under our charter to restore a house. So just so you know, we're very mindful of trying to capture a trailhead and not end up owning or having the responsibility for the rest of this 5 acres. And we've looked at alternatives, by the way, and continue to between now and this drop dead date. If your board decides to take the step on first reading to allow this to proceed. We continue to look at alternatives for trailhead for this 1,000-acre valley.
Thanks, Tim.
Rachel?
Yeah, I appreciate the effort going into this, and I also appreciate that every now and then you have to go back and expend more funds to hold on to the value of what you've already put out there. And I consider this good money after good, as opposed to the other way around. And so to move this along, I would make a motion to approve an ordinance on the first reading authorizing the acquisition of the Windstar Trailhead property set for a public hearing on July 22nd.
I'll second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to approve this acquisition on first reading. Further discussion, Michael?
Dale, do you have a map for this property?
Sure. Got it up right here. We just need to turn on the projector. Sorry about that, Michael. Is the projector thing on the right setting?
Take a minute.
It's warm.
Okay, here we are.
Let's see it breathing up there.
The map that we have doesn't show the entire Windstar property, but it shows the tail of the whale that's down by the firehouse and old snowmass. The balance of the property is actually much larger than the portion depicted here, and it goes up into that watershed there that has got that whole bowl above it. But down at the bottom, you've got Snowmass Creek Road running here, Capitol Creek Road going up this way. You've got the Snowmass Firehouse here. The Windstar driveway here crosses another parcel. The old Windstar, more recently RMI headquarters, sits right here. And the property that we are talking about purchasing is the one immediately adjacent to the Windstar driveway. Here's your scale here. So it's maybe 100 feet, give or take, down Snowmass Creek Road to the very next property. This 5 acres that's owned by Kevin Ward that we're proposing to acquire outright so that we can have the flexibility to decide what we want and then resell this residence or transfer it to another owner.
So, Dale, what are the dynamics of this? I mean, it's not contiguous. So how does parking and access work with this property?
Okay. Well, this is a public access up this driveway. It's been utilized by our public since 1997 when the county purchased the conservation trail easement here. So the notion would be if you had a trailhead here, you've got a short length in the county's right-of-way up Snowmass Creek Road till you get to this gravel driveway. So for someone wanting to hike or ride their horse, it's a very short distance down the road and up the driveway till you're right back where we want to be on this 1,000 acres.
So that driveway is a public access?
Correct.
Where is that recorded?
That was part of the due diligence when the county invested in this back in 1997, that the owner's rights in that driveway were transferred to the county for public access. Now I actually have asked the legal office to review that, and I don't know that they've had a chance to fully analyze that, but that's a question that I would love to maybe table and bring back in an exec session if there's pluses and minuses of that easement. I know Laura was wanting to see all the documents on it, and with the Hullabaloo we've both been involved in, I haven't had a chance to send those to Laura, but certainly by the time we would make our decision whether to close on this or not, we would want to have a top to bottom conclusion from your attorney about that public access on this driveway. Now, without belaboring that here and now, it's kind of almost an independent issue here, since we do have public access in this property, and it has been since 1997 dependent on the public's right to cross that driveway. It's never been questioned.
So that public access, can you drive a car on that public access?
That
asking
has been the case since I lived there in 1983 through 86. That has been the case since John Denver bought this property in 1979. What there is not a deeded right to do is park once you get there.
So you could drive your car and let your companions off on the property and then drive back to the,
Yeah, suppose you could do it that way.
or you could take your horse trailer and unload it there and then park your horse, so that you can access it in a vehicle, but you can't leave your vehicle.
Well, I think that's fair enough, although, you know, with the, I don't want to make any assumptions about the current WinStar owners' plans on this. What they've communicated with me through their counsel and said they intend to fully respect all of the public access rights that are a part of that easement. However,
They outline those?
well, they're outlined in the easement, and I suppose we should meet with them to make sure that we're all on the same page as to what that easement means. But to play devil's advocate, they don't have to let vehicles onto the property. The access that we have is for equestrians and pedestrians. So you can imagine that if people don't want to cooperate, we could end up with a difficult time right here with people pulling up and down the driveway in vehicles if there's not a place for them to turn around and come back out again.
And what about traffic along the road there? What is that like?
Well, Tim might have a better sense than I do. What I've heard from it has been mainly from Commissioner Childs that the road doesn't tend to have a lot of traffic. However, when there are events, for example, at the firehouse where the caucus has been meeting since it's lost its ability to meet at WinStar, apparently that little lot at the firehouse does fill up. But I can't really comment beyond that on the traffic on Snowmass Road.
The only thing I would add, if I may, is that as in Woody Creek, in Snowmass, though the traffic is light, when the road is a straightaway, the traffic can be moving right along, and that is a straightaway there, unlike another half mile up where it winds all the way up Snowmass Creek. There is, and one of the things our board asked the county attorney through Dale to check out is, what is the county right-of-way? Not just the just chipped and sealed surface, but what is the county right-of-way there? Because in rural areas, some places it's prescriptive and some places it's deeded or dedicated, and we want to know. One of the due diligence items is, what do we have to work with that gets you that 100 feet safely? And we've explored other ways to get to the driveway and continue to explore other ways, but they're not before us today, through other lands.
So what is the projection for parking spaces available on the property and the horse trailers, and what could you see?
I'm going to speculate because we haven't had an opportunity to do the sort of planning that you've seen us go through with Glacier and other places. In my experience, the use at WinStar has not been heavy. It's been passionate, but it's been one or two cars at a time. It's not the type of place where I would predict to see large crowds, because people have had the opportunity to visit this property by permission starting in 1979 and by right starting in 1997. And you have a couple of cars there, but it's not it's not a mountain biking thing, it's not an action sports kind of a property, and so it doesn't tend to attract a lot of people. Now, having said that, we like to create a little extra capacity as long as we're doing this. So my sense is that we need a space for a couple of horse trailers and half a dozen cars.
And that property provides that?
Yes. This is 5 acres, just to kind of talk about it a little bit, and this is something that we'd be happy to do a site visit and undertake some planning and answer this question more thoroughly before this contract goes hard. But there's a driveway that pulls in here and loops over here. This light area here is nothing but compacted gravel with cheatgrass in it. It's every bit as big as the parking lot that exists at Windstar today, which is right over here. So at least in terms of utilizing some soil that isn't otherwise in very good condition, that would be a likely spot. However, if the desire was to have it as close as possible to this side of the property, this is more of an irrigated pasture over here. Plenty of room over there. It does have some nice hay growing on it. So those are the kinds of management decisions that would need to be evaluated and made if you decide to go forward with this.
So are there water rights associated with this property?
There are water rights. I can't recite them,
I don't recall off the top of my head.
but there's a little ditch that runs along here. And frankly, unlike some of the some of the projects where the water rights are the thing that we're after, we're not really after them here. If this property goes back on the market, I would expect that those would go with the house as someone that would want to keep a horse or two out there.
So for six vehicles and 2 horse trailers, what would you project we'd pay for that?
What would be our net cost?
Yeah.
Well, that's a great question. The way I tend to look at that is that the market takes care of that answer insofar as we've got an appraisal contingency on the contract today, so we're not going to pay more than market value for this. When we go back on the market with the house minus whatever we want to keep, same thing. We'll get a market deal on it, and the difference will be, by the nature of it, the market value of what it is we're keeping. But now what that amount is, sitting here today, I really don't know. I would hope it would be as small a number as possible.
Okay. Thank you, Dale.
George?
So, Dale, I want to go back to your initial explanation of the property. So, this was purchased through GOCO funds and open space funds, and ABLT is a co-holder of the easement.
Right.
And in the documentation, it's listed as a public facility, or is it?
Yes, the nature of the use within, there's a 30-acre building envelope that sits over here where public uses frankly are excluded. The public use is really allowed way up in this larger valley. If this map were to scale, it would reach all the way down to the floor and beyond. But the public facility is identified as the use in that building envelope. So it was thought of as a place like a sustainable settings, or I can't remember the exact way that it's described, but it was intended to allow RMI to operate there forever, essentially.
So, maybe a question for you or for Laura. So, can you have a designated public facility without having public access or public parking?
Well, this is why I've asked to see the documents. We haven't seen them quite yet. John opined earlier that perhaps parking wasn't part of this, but it's something we want to go back and revisit to make sure before we close this deal.
Well, and George, my answer for that would be that although the right to have a public facility was reserved in the easement, it wasn't a right that was conveyed to the public. It was a right that was reserved to the landowner. So it's like the right to farm. In our easement, it's one of those where if the landowner chooses to continue to do it, they may, but we can compel them. And so we can't compel the current owners of WinStar to continue to operate a public facility. It simply was one of those rights reserved at their discretion in the easement. Unlike the public access rights, where there's a paragraph that says the public has the right to do X, Y, and Z, which Tim was outlining. But that paragraph doesn't include the parking. It says the landowner reserved the rights to do, you know, A, B, and C, different list, and that included this public facility. From what I can tell, the current owner simply wants to use this as extra property. We believe that the people who own it are also the owners of the property next door, down in this area over here. They are into horses and horse sports, and I would predict that they don't want to have any use in that building envelope at all. They want a big pasture and a place to ride their horses. So there's nothing that we can do to compel them to continue to have a public facility here at all. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see that old WinStar building disappear here before too long.
So then, Laura, if we were to purchase this property and segue off a parking area, I'm sure it's probably not zoned for to be subdivided. How does that happen then?
Well, it's two potential possibilities. One is creating an easement for parking on the property without a subdivision. The second is a subdivision, which would come before you as an irregular subdivision, not a subdivision by right. It depends on how open space wants to proceed with the property.
Georgia County does have a provision in its code called the subdivision exemption process, where if the county wishes to acquire a portion of a parcel for any public use, open space as well as raft a bus stop or whatever it might be, the county has the authority to acquire a portion of a parcel and to divide it accordingly. And we've done this a few times. In fact, we're in the process of doing it for the Carricart property now. This is an Eagle County example, but for the Glacier Trailhead.
I mean, I can see, and I supported the original decision by the BOCC at our joint meeting to go ahead and put this property under contract, because I understand and understood the need to be able to provide access to what is, as you said, just a great property, almost 1,000 acres, and I've gone out there and hiked, and I've seen bikers out there and equestrians, and we've got an investment into this property with GOCO and ABLT, so I don't want to see the public not be able to access it. So we need to resolve the parking issue, and it's just a question of what is the best way to do that. This is sort of like the first option that came up as an opportunity, but there's a lot of contingencies, a lot of questions that have to be answered. And you know, the thought that one might easily be able to put the property back on the market and be able to market it and sell it, knowing that you're going to have public parking contiguous to that property, may be more of a challenge than the realtor is assuming, because this property in itself has been on and off the market for several years, and I think this is sort of the first action it's gotten. So that may be a challenge, and I just wonder, I know that open space had threw out some other ideas in terms of, well, would the county be interested in purchasing or investing in this property as part of our housing program, perhaps for staff? And I know John hasn't had an opportunity to go out and take a look at that, but just off the top of your head, what sort of things would you be thinking, and what sort of process, knowing that we're under a fairly tight timeline of August 7th to make a determination if there's any alternatives, and where not to leave open space sort of in a lieu on this purchase for a half a dozen cars and a few horse trailers.
So open space is on a roll right now of acquiring housing opportunities for the county. So, you know, I think the first thing, George, would be to come back and have the same discussion. We're exploring the same opportunity of housing on 2 other acquisitions that Open Space recently made. We haven't had a chance to look at this one, although I suspect this one probably requires less work to make livable than maybe the other properties that we've been looking at. The first consideration is just kind of a policy consideration from the board. You know, with exception of these open space properties, we have been working on direction to try and acquire affordable housing opportunities that are within existing urban growth boundaries, municipal services, all those sorts of things, just because of the long-term affordability of not having to maintain a septic system or you know, whatever other infrastructure may be unique to a property. The other reason that we're looking at the properties on the other open space acquisitions, and that may apply here too, is that we saw the potential for significant conflict, I think, between the intended use of open space for those properties and how public access and parking would likely occur on those lots. And so we felt that to both avoid those future conflicts and you know, help with our housing issues, that you know, we could maybe kill 2 birds with 1 stone, if you will, while stepping outside of that policy direction of where we want to look at housing. I think it's something that we could evaluate. That the housing in these rural areas in the long run is going to be more expensive than the housing in the more urbanized areas, and I think we need to take that into account and think about that. But I guess that's a really long way of saying, one, we would need to have the discussion from the board that you're okay with us continuing to look at these properties outside of those original parameters. And 2, just kind of look at that cost differential and the opportunity to maybe avoid the types of conflicts that you're talking about with, you know, public parking area and public access close to a residential area and a more rural area, and come back to you with a recommendation just like we are on the other properties. So if the board, you know, is comfortable with us looking at that on this property, is, you know, just like we are on the other ones, we could certainly do that and try and come back with a recommendation. Obviously, the other 2 properties have already gone hard on ownership, and we're working on those. I know this is probably contingent on the second reading, so we need to fast track this one.
Thanks.
And Brian has been out there.
Oh, okay. And Brian and I haven't had a chance to talk about that.
Rachel?
Yeah, I just would like to add, I think that these have been all very good questions that have been raised by Michael and George, and this is first reading, and we would have a contingency period to come back with as many answers as you can for this acquisition, even if it's just, you know, vaguely schematic of the parking or the potential of the subdivision. For myself, I want to make it really clear that should we move forward with any sort of using of county housing dollars to buy the unit out, I would believe we would only do that after we have it reappraised with the parking component taken out or, you know, acquired, and be assured that the housing purchase is not riding anyhow on the back of the open space funds, or that the open space program is not getting its access on the backs of the county housing funds. I'm not sure that the subsidy level required would be something that I would be willing to invest housing dollars in compared to other opportunities, but it is one thing that we would have to explore, just as we would explore the resale value we can capture by putting it back on the free market. And so that's neutral to this proposal. That is not driving it. There's not an affordable housing interest driving it or the use of these open space funds. What is driving it is the ability to get to all of the WinStar property, and this is just the end of the tail of the whale, as it were. And so, as I said, I really don't like having to spend additional funds for the access, but because of a series of partners we have that have had their own self-interest in heart as opposed to the public interest in this, and I respect and admire the RMI agenda. They're out there trying to save the world. Maybe that's a little bigger than a piece of open space here, and have their new capital drive to satisfy. However, I do think this is worth moving forward. This is worth continuing the investigation and come back with greater answers for us at the next meeting.
I have three statements or questions about concerns. One is, and I think you realize that this isn't the ideal parking place for WinStar. The ideal parking space is not it's not for sale, and the owner doesn't want to part with it. And that would be the Zabriskie parcel. This area right in here would make the ideal parking place.
Or right where it already is now, one of the two, but yeah.
Or in WinStar, I think actually the Zabriskie one would be better parking. It's a wider area, and there'd be more turnaround area than actually with the WinStar parking lot. But either one of those possibilities could come available in the future. And I would want our ownership of this parcel to be such that we could sell the whole thing if we come up with a better parking facility. I know it's what's available now, and I'm in favor of purchasing it right now, but still hope that in the future we could get a better parking place and then sell this whole property to somebody else is what the direction I would proceed. Two questions about the parking area here on the Kevin Ward property. Would we be allowed to put a separate driveway into the parking area off of Snowmass Creek Road?
We can add a driveway to the county road.
Right. There's plenty of site distance there. You could add another driveway. There would just be an access permit that would need to be applied for and completed.
The ideal thing, I mean, if you were going in there with a horse trailer, being able to drive through from one driveway out the other would be the ideal. But if the other part is sold to a third party, the house part is sold to a third party, the driveway would go right by their house, and ideally the public parking would not have to go right by the people's house and instead could go in a separate entrance off of Snowmass Creek Road. So that's just a consideration on management plan or maybe on our due diligence to think about that. Then in terms of the use of the parking lot, would this parking lot also be able to be used by the public for other purposes besides going into WinStar? And what I'm referring to specifically is it's right next door to Seth Saxon's property, where he's been holding two public events there every summer, one for the Aspen Animal Shelter, a benefit, and also Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus Community Picnic is held there while he has the tent set up. So that's just an example of two events that are right there that could potentially make use of the parking area if it were available for that.
Well, Steve, by great coincidence, I included a quote from the county's home rule charter in the memo for this meeting describing the basis on which open space can invest in something like a trailhead. Article 13, Section 5.1 of the county charter sets forth the purposes for which we can expend these funds, and they include preserving historic routes of ingress and egress to public lands and waterways, providing access to and from recreational or urban destinations, providing recreational opportunities throughout Pitkin County which are directly related to and not inconsistent with the foregoing purposes. So I don't know that I want to try to render an opinion on all of the potential uses of this parking lot now, but there's certainly some flexibility there within those parameters, and that's assuming that this is paid for with open space dollars. If the other choice the county can make, if it wanted to have broader purposes, and if the county attorney's office felt that these were more limited than you might want for the types of purposes you're describing, then we could talk about other ways to finance this.
Yeah, I could see, I mean, I just thought of another possible use. We're like bicycle heaven up there on Snowmass and Capitol Creek Road, and people might, I mean, that could be a potential use for it as just a trailhead parking for parking, going riding on the road on a shorter ride without having to go through the lower 2 miles of Snowmass Creek Road, which are more steeper and more dangerous for a bicycler. So
it strikes me that Old Snowmass is a community, and it does not have a community center. It used to use WinStar, and it needs to decide for itself what is the center of Old Snowmass. Is it the Conoco? I don't know.
downtown Old Snowmass, where the Midstate Motors is. Okay, well, thank you. Anyhow, those are things to think about. Any further questions or considerations from the board? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve on first reading this acquisition. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bill. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. You're not done with me yet, Patty.
Oh. Don't go anywhere then.
Next, we have, on the agenda, it says ordinance authorizing an IGA between Eagle County and Pitkin County regarding the Glacier Ranch open space.
Yeah, and I have been tutored by my esteemed county attorney that I mislabeled this as an ordinance. It should be a formal resolution, procedurally very similar, but so we need to strike the word ordinance and write in the word resolution. It's the proper way to approve this. By way of introducing this topic, I wanted to show you a map that is an interesting moment in American history. And what this map is, we have is a map that was proposed by John Wesley Powell in 1864, thereabout, before the western states had their boundaries decided. And some of you may know John Wesley Powell was a one-armed man who decided to take a group of explorers down the Colorado River in some flat-bottom skiffs. First time any white person had ever gone through there. Well, he was also a great thinker, and he suggested at that time that it would be a terrible mistake to define political boundaries in the West in any way other than along watershed lines. And these boundaries were the boundaries that John Wesley Powell proposed for the western states that were all drafted around watershed lines, because he rightly saw that our most important decisions in the West were going to be decisions that were united by communities within a watershed. Unfortunately, this is not how the Western political boundaries were decided. So now I want to go to my picture of the glacier open space. And as all of you may know,
That's a beautiful.
all of you indeed do know, we live in a watershed in the Roaring Fork Valley that is divided into 4 different counties. And that has created some challenges for us in optimizing the way that we live here. We are fortunate that we have a partner in Eagle County that is willing and able to partner with us and innovate with us for the greater good of managing this watershed as a unit for the benefit of everyone who lives here. And in the photograph I have up now, you've got a county boundary line that runs right through the middle of this photograph. I don't know if anyone can see it. You wouldn't know it was there if you were just a Indian standing there looking at the watershed, and you would think it would be ridiculous to have it there, but it runs right along here. And through a partnership that everyone knows about, we decided to protect this bowl of agricultural land. We sometimes call it the Fertile Crescent of the Roaring Fork Valley. We've got Crown Mountain back here. Pitkin County includes some 9,000 acres of BLM land up on the Crown. The Eagle County boundary comes across like this up to about here and then comes down like this. A little corner here, and then we've got Garfield County over here. Well, through a real astounding series of events, Eagle and Pitkin decided to jointly invest in the Glacier Open Space. And the Glacier Open Space includes a good portion of this agricultural land that you see here, as well as a nice piece of this red cliff, and reaches all the way to the center of the Roaring Fork River. By the end of this month, we will have also closed on a conservation easement on the old Cerise place, now called Emma Farms, that reaches into Pitkin County right up in this area here. Through the efforts of Gary and his team, we've adopted a management plan for the Glacier Open Space. I want to recognize Toby Sprunk is here. Toby is the director of Eagle County's Open Space program. Has come over to be with us today. In our management plan for the Glacier Open Space, we've provided certain rules that are going to require the services of John Armstrong and his team to make sure that everyone conducts themselves in a respectful way out here in this setting. The trick is that at the moment, Pitkin County is without political authority to enforce much of anything here. We could right here, but not right here. So John Wesley Powell would be wagging his finger at us saying, I told you so. But we have a workaround, which is in your packet today. And that is an IGA with Eagle County, whereby Eagle County is willing to delegate the authority to enforce the rules in the Glacier Management Plan to Pitkin County's open space rangers. And I'm very much in support of this. Laura's had a chance to review the work of the Eagle County Attorney's Office, and I think is comfortable with the IGA as we've drafted it. It's primarily the work of Toby's colleagues over in Eagle County. And Toby, will you come up here and say something?
Oh, say something meaningful? Well, this is really just a continuation of the same conversation we've been having for 4 years about partnering. In fact, I was thinking about Emma recently. So we're close to closing that deal. It was my first week on the job when Dale called me over to look at the Glacier properties and said, you know, salt and stall is the top priority. We really need to get that trail connectivity. Glacier Ranch is the next in line. And here we are 4 years later about to close the third piece of this. So it's a great accomplishment and something I think we should all be proud of. But just to reiterate what Dale said, I think the IGA acknowledges that with the case of Glacier and I guess now formerly known as the Salt and Stall property, that Pitkin is the owner. And so indeed you have the right to create rules and regulations regarding its use and management. And to that end, we recognize that in this IGA, those rules and regs would, if violated, would go through the Eagle County court system. So I've talked to our sheriff's office. They're comfortable with this. They think it's a great a great partnership as well, and I've also run this by the DA, and they don't have any issues either. So I think we're in support and ready to go.
I want to thank you and your commissioners and your open space board for working with us.
Thanks for coming over.
My
Yeah.
pleasure. Yeah.
George?
So, Toby, yeah, thanks for coming over. If someone were to park on Hooks Lane, Hooks Lane is in Eagle County, does that give our rangers the ability to ticket those vehicles?
I don't think so. That would be something you'd have to call the county deputy for. This is really specific to the Glacier Open Space.
Okay, so the road is separate, so that would be an Eagle County issue.
Correct.
We're primarily looking at the prohibition on pets and our seasonal closures. Probably be the two big ones. John, you want to comment on what you see coming down the pipeline in terms of our interaction with the great public on this property?
I'm looking forward to complete and flawless compliance by the building code.
Laura, you and I had a discussion about this resolution and some of the wording of it, and one of the questions that had to do with if fines were levied against somebody, where would that money go?
Yeah, so under the IGA, the money would go to Eagle County, and there is statutory authority to do that. That's a policy decision by the board, but legally, that's something that can occur.
Mhm. So would there be, is there anything that that we would be remunerated by Eagle County for our ranger time or anything like that?
That's not the way the IGA is set up.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that because we had talked about it.
Yeah, I had some questions, but I've done some research and feel comfortable, as long as you guys are fine with the policy.
Okay.
Well, I should also add, as our program continues to grow and evolve, we have hired our first seasonal ranger. In fact, we're going to come over and hike the property on Friday, just so he's aware of it. Again, it's Pitkin open space land. We're not going to patrol it as a matter of course, but we are continuing to expand our capacity in that regard. And so someday we may be revisiting this conversation.
Unburden us of this.
Well, maybe.
Or partner with us.
Yeah, well, you're still the landowner, so that rests with you. But again, just to clarify that we are making steps in that direction and continue this conversation in the future.
Sure, just have to hike that property.
You
know.
Friday afternoon, of course. Yes.
Reminds me, though, of an important bit of context, which is we've had cross-delegation with the Aspen Parks Rangers for years. And we also have one of these delegations similar to this one with Garfield County allowing us to patrol the Crystal open space property that's outside of Pitkin County. So we look forward to having partners. The more eyes on the ground, the better.
Yeah. Partnerships are generally very good things to have. Yeah. Okay.
Would you entertain a motion?
Yes, I think so.
I'm going to put out a motion to approve the resolution authorizing an IGA with Eagle County regarding enforcement of rules and regulations on the Glacier open space.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to approve the resolution. And does this page need to be officially amended to do
I think that correction will come out.
Yes, it needs, so on the second reading, you guys will get the correct version, and that's what should be adopted.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dale.
And Steve, I think the people might be here for
Yes. Yeah, I was going to take a step back right now.
Steve, thanks for coming, Tim.
So we're going to go back to the item number 2, which is the special event liquor permit for the Jazz Aspen Snowmass. Jeanette?
Okay. Jeanette Jones, Deputy County Clerk, and I have with me today Holly Upper and Jen Horowitz, who are with Jazz Aspen at Snowmass. And now give you an overview for your consideration in the public of the event that they proposed. And Mike Kramer wasn't able to attend today, he had a conflict. But this year's special use permit with community development is all the provisions and the issues have been addressed, and they're proposing to issue the permit. So I will let them talk to you about their event, and if you have any questions, you can pose them either to myself or them. They will be best to answer them.
Thank you, Jeanette. Thanks for taking some time to hear our final permit request. So very briefly, this is Jazz Aspen Snowmass's 25th year, as it turns out, and we are having an event a week from Friday up on right near McLean Flats Road at the ranch, a ranch privately owned by the Hearst family. He's also very involved. He's the chairman of the Aspen Music Festival, who we recently collaborated with for a show the other night. So this is all very close. Anyway, this is our annual fundraiser, which raises money for our music education programs, which are focused on the schools of the Roaring Fork Valley. In case you don't know, that amounts to about $150,000 a year that we expend in all the schools. Most of them have a budget of about $1,400 per school for music, which is basically nothing. So everything that happens when we do these events supports those programs, as well as everything else that we do, but it's really focused on the music education programs. The event should be sold out, should have almost 500 people, and then we're actually not going to be doing, this is also being advertised to our supporters as our last gala, not like the last tour and that we'll never come back, but for a while, because we've just decided that our calendar is too thick. So without boring you with the details, this is really our last hurrah. We've hired a big band. We've got we're honoring all the people that helped us get here. And we should hopefully raise, again, a few $100,000 to keep our music ed programs going. And then we're actually not going to be doing this format event, which is a big undertaking of building and all of the things that are involved. We're going to focus in smaller places that are already built, as opposed to what we have to go through to make it a place where we can do this. So that's what the event is. We've got a wonderful band hired, and it should be a very good time. And basically, we're here just to make sure we have a liquor permit, because the people will definitely be having some beverages to accompany their dinner before they hopefully dance it off on the dance floor. That's the event.
Rachel?
Will you have tips-trained bartenders?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Everything we do
Okay.
is we have a very tight team. The same team that does our Labor Day weekend event, which is far bigger than this in terms of the number of people. We only deal with tips-trained bartenders.
Yeah, well,
Very,
the larger event, most people do take a bus up to and don't drive from. But the other question is, what is the parking plan for and the number of expected attendees?
Well, I'll let Holly tell you the parking plan. 500 is our capacity.
Okay.
And go ahead.
So we have Jay's Ballet that will be doing the parking at the ranch itself, and the Hearst have given us a field on their property to use for the ballet spots, and then people will it will be right on site. So
right adjacent to where the tent is put up.
Okay, so no congestion on the road?
No, it will all be on site. They'll actually pull off into Alejandra Lane and then down, and then park on there, so there shouldn't be any congestion.
Okay. And what are the hours of the event?
It starts at 6 p.m. and it should go to around
7:30.
Okay. And so
The majority, a lot of the people generally with these events, there's a flow at the end. They don't all rush for the exits at the same time.
Sure.
The older set doesn't last as long. The
Yeah.
younger set lasts a little longer.
Yeah, you
We
have to kind of
usually
fight
see
it.
right around, the first thing happens is when that clock hits 10, you start to see them fall, like, start to slowly tip over, and then as it gets to, just like that, it's just sort of a gradual.
The majority will probably stay until 10:30 because our main act is,
Right.
will finish at 10:30.
And then I would imagine that through your work with Mike, who's unable to be here today, you've talked about the noise concerns or noise emanating after certain time periods from the property.
Yep, I've asked him and he said that it should be fine.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, and I hope it's a great event. How do people get a hold of tickets?
They can call our office,
Call,
970.
call, email.
Jazz Aspen
Jazz Aspen Summits, or whatever. This Holly is our development director,
Okay.
and she's the first line of defense if the.
Thank you very much.
Patty?
Are there going to be any shuttles offered for many of the local hotels where people may be staying, or accommodations?
Not really, because their people are too scattered. It's not that, the reality is that the vast majority of the people that are coming are residents or part-time residents, and not, some people flying in from out of town, but it's not that they're all in any one place that we could have a shuttle to even gather them. Some of them definitely, I would say, as opposed to a bus shuttle, they're definitely customers of ours, patrons who just arrange rides.
A lot of them are.
A lot of them do that. They just, they have a car service, they don't even wanna deal with it themselves.
Or say they're saying the Limelight, utilizing the Limelight shuttles, because that would just be helpful for that mass
And
parking.
I think the Limelight will allow them, because it is fairly close to the
Yes.
center of town, so the Limelight, most of the hotels will take them out there.
Because they shuttle them to Snowmass, so it's no
Yeah.
different than that. Okay, thank you.
Or we,
This is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing.
I
George?
make a motion to approve a special event liquor permit for Jazz Aspen Snowmass.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to approve the liquor license. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Thanks, thank you for doing this.
Okay.
Congratulations
Thank you
on
very
your
much.
many years.
Yeah,
can't
25.
believe it, we're still here. Thank you.
You and Open Space, 25 years.
I still have a T-shirt from the first one on Wagner Park.
You have that?
Oh, really?
Really? The
Yeah.
one with the big orange lit?
Yeah, I remember Harry Teague and the August
The only other person I know who's
Teague.
wearing that, you will laugh, and then we'll get out of your way. I was down driving by LG Bell last year with my wife, turned right there by the shopping center, and we noticed a hobo, seriously, on the right side of the bus station. He had a big top hat on, he had tails, and he had that T-shirt.
There you go, there you go. I'm in good
That's
company.
the only other time I've ever seen it, so you hold on to that.
Yeah,
That's
there you go. They're durable.
They're very, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you, that's a great story.
Thank you.
Okay, going to item number 5 on the agenda. It's an ordinance approving the purchase of Oak Grove Townhouses, Lot 86. And we have John Redmond and Brian Pettit here.
Approval on a 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit. This housing fund is providing the funds for it. We think it's a great unit, something that can be used immediately.
We can put a map up.
Yeah, let's put a map up.
So while you're doing that, would this go into our pool or the APSHA pool? Have we determined that yet?
We don't know yet. It's a good chance it'll go into the after pool.
We have several units that we're going to be proposing to purchase, and we'll look at them holistically with the board to determine that. It looks like, given what our allocation is, the next allocation would be to APSHA. What makes this, I think, a versatile unit, both bedrooms are located upstairs and they both have bathrooms. So it could work as a roommate situation as well as another situation as well. It's located in the Basalt Business Center, which also has businesses like Valley Lumber, Woody Creek Distilleries in there. It is walking distance to a bus stop. It's just over 1,000 square feet, and for $280,000, it's one of the cheaper units we've been able to find to enter into our program.
So
Marked in red
I
there.
think you have a laser pointer there.
There we go.
You can maybe point out original, the main intersection with 82 up there is original road.
Yeah.
And that's where the bus stop.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And so it's down by the, kind of by the lumber yard, to the left, and Woody Creek. And Rachel, thank you, you were pointing right at the
Actual unit is here.
actual unit is located.
And that's the covered parking. And
That's
these
right.
are part of the complex as well.
That's correct.
And there's a street view down there you can click on too, John, if you want to.
Oh, cool.
Which doesn't come in terribly clearly.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, those are nice.
I think it's over here.
Steve, I have a question.
Patty?
When you, so we're buying this with our housing funds, the counties, and if we do put it into the APSHA with any other units, it will still be reserved for Pickens County employees, not people employed in Pickens County, but Pickens County employees as the first option
Yes.
for renters, or
No,
always?
No, not really. If I may, Steve?
Yeah, go ahead.
What we've been doing over the past 4 years is using the mitigation dollars,
Right.
purchasing the units, and either putting it to APSHA for lottery for the general public, or reserving it for a Pickens County employee. We're maintaining ownership, we're not reselling it, and the board will set the rental rate itself after the purchase. But additionally, we've been kind of following a roughly 50-50, 50% reserve for Pickens County employees as part of our workforce needs, and 50% to the general lottery pool.
Now,
And
sorry, along the lines of what you're saying, Patty, though, if Pickens County employees are not interested in in that county unit, it would go to APSHA then for the general population.
Yeah, that's where I was
Okay,
going.
yeah. in
But
a
yeah, but your
sequence.
clarification even furthers my questions. I mean,
And
answers my
if
question.
the balance gets out of order, then the unit would go to APSHA. Without Pickens County employees getting a priority, they would still be allowed to bid for the unit.
So the plan is a 50-50 and weighing it as to what the demand is.
And so Patty, prior to you coming on, the goal we set was to split 50-50 has been explained until we got to an inventory of about 12 units for the county, at which point we'd come back. We're not there yet, because that'd take 24 units, and then we'd come back and kind of revisit. Do we still have additional needs? Do we want to keep that? But we have not reached that point yet. One of the things, as Brian was saying, we ran into is we didn't always have employees that were ready to jump, and rather than have units vacant, we would go ahead and get those into the APSHA pool, and then we'd grab units, make them available for Pickens
Balance
County.
it out. Okay.
Let's see, is it possible to walk from this unit to the Rafta bus stop, cutting through by the Mid-Valley Clinic that's behind there, or do you have to walk around by way of the road?
I don't know about the cut-through route. I know that employees here extensively use RAFTA, and they walk from this complex. Now, if there's a cut-through that's a shortcut, I don't know about it.
Well, looking on Google Earth, it looks like there is a shortcut.
I think there's
It maybe is trespassing on somebody's property to do that, but it's really close to the Rafta stop if they can cut through. This also used to be, and probably still is, a bus stop for the Basalt school system. I stopped there 3 years, right at that exact spot, so I presume they're probably still stopping there because there were a lot of families with kids living in those units.
Would you accept the motion, or?
Yes.
And then we could have the public hearing. I would move to approve an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County approving the purchase of Oak Grove Townhouses Lot H6 for Pickens County employees' housing inventory, and authorizing the chair to execute the necessary documents.
I'll second.
And I guess the public hearing's on the 22nd.
Yeah. This would be for, this is the first reading, public hearing set for July 22nd. It's moved and seconded to approve this ordinance for this acquisition. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
and
you.
thank you for your work on the housing issue.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Okay, we have no land use items. Open discussion.
Sorry, I'm coming back. I just had one open discussion item for you, and that was to revisit the interviews that you did yesterday for the joint appointment to the Housing Board. Just as a clarification, it is one appointment for the alternate position, so we just had those labeled a little bit confusingly. So both applicants were applying for the same position. If you give me a second to pull up my email, I believe the city has made a recommendation at this point. I don't know if you want to know that before you begin your discussion, or
No,
see
I
where your
don't.
discussions come out, and then I'll let you know.
Okay,
Looking to see what's still
So we appoint one out of the two.
Correct.
yes. Or could continue to re-interview others if we felt the need.
If you don't like either.
Well, I would support appointing Becky Gilbert. I felt that she had more experience, had a better understanding of the program and some of the issues, and thought she'd probably be a better fit at this point.
You know, I asked some tough questions of both candidates, and I would agree with you, George, on the experience level. I believe our other candidate, also named Rachel,
Rachel
you know, really
Middleton.
showed a great deal of passion about the subject, and you know, I would encourage her to be involved as a citizen advocate and get to know more of the process and bring her issues to the board, and perhaps there'll be another opening in the future, but I will choose experience at this point in time.
I agree with that. I
Yeah.
hope Rachel stays involved, though, because she does have some interesting positions on things, and she's young and energetic, and I think she'd be valuable on any, we could, you know, use that energy.
Yeah, that was my feeling too. Just the fact that, I mean, Becky knew a lot more, and she had been to
The
housing
meetings.
board meetings and was much more up to and much more knowledgeable about things. John, what is the city of Aspen's?
Pulling it up still.
What was their decision?
Give me just a sec here.
Then what do we do?
We're just going a little slow here.
The suspense is killing me.
I know that.
You know, I don't know that it matters. We can tell them how we.
Yeah, I don't think it matters either.
Well,
We make our decision, and
We'll have to talk about it if
And
we
I
disagree.
believe, from memory, I think you both are in alignment, and I apologize, the notes are
Okay,
just
well,
not
I
going.
guess if we vote and we picked somebody different than they picked, then
We have to come back to the
we
table.
have to revisit it.
And
And
discuss it.
just to be clear, the board's discussion has been in favor of supporting Becky Gilbert, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
so we need to know.
Thank you.
Okay, Rachel?
I had two small items for open discussion. One, a clarification on the restaurant inspection fee issue for the CCI. And I apologize, there's just a lot of bills each session and how they've turned out. We did not get any statutory changes last year, but they have put together an interim committee to study restaurant inspection fees. And so in checking with some of the other colleagues who are interested in this issue, they felt that it still would be good to submit something simple to have a placeholder for the legislative agenda, so that if the interim committee comes out with any recommendations, we'll have a CCI position to support it and move it forward. But that it may require some change of the language of how we are submitting. That we, you know.
Yeah, so Rachel, would it be to kind of get a placeholder pursuant to the recommendations of this committee and just have it really simple and?
Yeah, and just put it simply on their agenda that way, and if you need to check with Ginny Pingino on any particular language that, you know, she feels would help it evolve, that would be a good move. So there actually is some work going on that issue, which is, so it's good for our push. And then the second was kind of to ask my fellow board members and county manager, I believe this week we've got an email with a housing survey coming from APCHA. Are we supposed to fill that in as a board, or are we supposed to fill it in all individually? Have other members filled it in yet already?
I received it, but I haven't acted on it yet.
And
Okay.
I just saw the email.
I filled it in just as an individual,
Okay,
because the questions would said it doesn't matter where you live in the valley, they're,
what your thoughts are?
applied to.
Okay, well, I just was giving us all the heads up to remind us to make sure we fill it in. Steve's right ahead of things, but it's very important because the city has separately done some studies through community development related to the affordable housing generation needs of all the free market homes. And they've come up with some pretty small conclusions that made me really kind of wonder how accurate they were. It was all self-reported as a survey. There weren't any verifications separately from property management companies of the types of hours that are needed to be spent to maintain one residential second home. And so that may be pointing the city towards new or lower mitigation standards on second homes. And so the APCHA study is really looking at a different aspect, and that's more demand side and needs. And so I'd really just like to encourage all the board members to be sure to fill that in, and the public as well, if you haven't had a chance to take the APCHA housing survey.
Yeah, and APCHA is asking everyone who works and lives in Pickett County to take the survey, and it is available on their website. Actually, it can be linked from our website, pickenscounty.com housing survey.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any way we could help get the word out to people about filling that in while it's still an active survey, but I think that would be valuable for all of us to get as much information, as many comments as possible. Thank you.
Any further open discussion? Okay, I would entertain a motion to go into, it says special meeting. We are already in a meeting. I don't think we need to go into a special meeting. I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session for purpose of county manager evaluation pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024F.
So moved.
Second.
And this also falls more formally under personnel matters?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, thank you, Grassroots. So we'll take a 5-minute break while Zach